Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about China because China is basically implementing cyber reviews for Chinese companies that are going public elsewhere. Now, this is really interesting. It's coming from Reuters by Brenda Go and Josh Horwitz. Now, here's what's going on. China said today that it will put in force new rules to increase its oversight of plans by Chinese platform firms to list on overseas stock markets in the latest move to tighten up its grip on its ever-growing technology sector. The Cyberspace Administration of China, or CAC, said that these new rules would come into effect on February 15th and require platform companies with data on more than 1 million users to undergo a security review before listing their shares overseas. Meaning, these are going to be the large corporations coming out of China if they've got information on 1 million users or more. And I quote the CAC in a statement: "With stock market listings, there is a risk that key information, infrastructure, core data, important data, or a large amount of personal information could be impacted, controlled, or maliciously used by foreign governments." This basically reiterates a concern that they flagged in July when these changes were first proposed. Now, in a separate statement, the CAC also said that it would implement new rules on March 1st on the use of algorithm recommendation technology to increase oversight of news providers that use technology to disseminate information. These rules would also give users the right to switch off the service if they chose. Now, both sets of rules were proposed last year and are expected to potentially impact a large swath of companies, such as the massive ones in China tech-wise, like TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance Beijing, that is the company we're talking about here, as well as e-commerce giant Alibaba, they're basically Amazon size, and many other smaller players, but still obviously large players if they have 1 million or more people that they have information on. Now, the CAC move comes amid a slew of regulatory changes in China over the past year that have dampened the appetite of firms to list overseas, but bankers hope that these new rules will provide more clarity in 2022. The CAC did not specify whether these rules will apply to companies seeking listings in Hong Kong. As China is taking over Hong Kong, that has been contentious, as we've all seen here and around the world. But lawyers and bankers said that based on the wording of the rules, it appears that Chinese companies with more than 1 million users seeking to list in the city would not be required to seek a cybersecurity review. So basically, Hong Kong, and I quote, is being treated as part of China, offshore, though not a foreign market, and this paves the way for more deals to return to Hong Kong. So we're going to see that might actually be a boon for Hong Kong. Obviously, the loss of freedom and rights, as we were seeing in protests, etc., not a big fan of. Now, these rules published today did not specify whether the plans would also be retrospective. I'm assuming they're also talking about retroactive as well, meaning looking back at these large firms that have already been listed publicly somewhere else. The CAC changes also come after a slew of recent moves by Chinese authorities to boost oversight of Chinese companies' offshore listings. China's state planner said last week that it would demand regulatory clearance for overseas Chinese listings in sensitive sectors such as internet news and publishing. Separately, the China Securities Regulatory Commission said on December 24 that it would require companies wishing to list overseas to submit filings to the agency for registration under a system that also involves close coordination among various regulatory bodies. And as we've seen, the Chinese government appears to be cracking down on the most public of essentially anything in China. We've seen a lot of their celebrities basically get tagged in some way, shape, or form or disappear. Jack Ma of Alibaba just disappeared as well and eventually reemerged. We saw a major tennis star accuse a Chinese official of assault. She basically disappeared and then later backtracked. Now what we're seeing is those massive companies that are already beholden to the government per a 2017 Chinese law that has them basically turning over information on foreign nationals they're collecting to the Chinese government. Think TikTok and all of the American users' information that TikTok is getting, scraping, and learning, turning that over to the government. Now, China is basically saying they want to control the economic ecosystem as well. This, I think, coincides with their Belt and Road Initiative as they are pushing into other countries. And as we see this bifurcation of the internet, that by around 2028 or so, per all predictions, I actually wrote about this a couple years ago for Forbes, this actually aligns with that because why should basically, let's say, the US stock markets reap rewards from Chinese corporations when China's own stock market can become the center of influence? They already want to replace the US dollar as a reserve currency in the world. They are a growing economy. They are fast and quickly spreading their authoritarian internet and also infrastructure into other countries as well, whether you think about that or not. But I think this is a logical move for them. Now, I'm all for cybersecurity reviews. I think every corporation should do a cybersecurity review. I don't care if you're small or massive. You should have periodic reviews and tests. There has to be a certain amount of vigilance maintained because we are living in the era of criminal hacking. But to basically do it, at the point of a gun, for example, for these large corporations in China, is never a welcome thing. That said, we have a lot of regulatory bodies here that require good security controls. Sarbanes-Oxley, for example, for publicly traded organizations, Security and Exchange Commissions, standards, or SEC compliance as well, HIPAA for healthcare and all of that. So corporations around the world are already adhering to these kinds of guidelines, but nobody's really putting a gun to their head. And in some ways that's detrimental, meaning most corporations out there, and I talked about this the other day, are reactive, meaning, they play it fast and loose, or they're lax with their security, or they put in a modicum of security controls in there, then they get breached, then out comes the wallet, out comes the spending, out comes all of these things because they're trying to avoid fines. So this is obviously a very huge problem that we've got here, and I think everybody needs to go through this. We all need to step up our cybersecurity game, but I don't think this is China's reasoning here. They are basically doing this, I think, to slow these things down, to understand the controls that these companies do and do not have on potential Chinese citizens. But I also think they want to keep these corporations in the Chinese ecosystem, which is why they would be opening up Hong Kong, another major stock market out there, and also trying to push their own stock exchange as they are pushing into dozens and dozens of countries around the globe. So that is your news of the day. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. But once again, China continues to rise. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.